College students panic as university eliminates gender and DEI centers. This is a new tactic that universities are using to take a gender center, a diversity center, combine them into something new like an engagement center. And by doing that, they transition, so to speak, no pun intended, what used to be inappropriate centers for something that everyone has access to. And that upsets these students. I will give them credit for this. They do see the writing on the wall. Their special diversity centers made just for them so they could feel comfortable, excluding other students at taxpayers' expense, are shut down and they're not getting reopened. From ljworld.com, University of Kansas students protest merger of diversity and gender offices on the Lawrence campus, fears grow that it's a step towards cutting them. Yes, it's not just a step towards cutting them, it's step one in cutting them. Otherwise, there's no point in merging these operations. As you look at this story, you see a small picture of a few people that are protesting. There was one person in particular that caught my eye. I was going to use them for the thumbnail, but to use them for the thumbnail makes the thumbnail look a little bit too strange for the video. Here's who I'm talking about. Now, I don't know who this person is, but how can you set up a college at state expense or university at state expense, have the taxpayers paying for this, to try to make this person with a green mohawk and white clown makeup feel normal, feel like they're comfortable wherever they go? How can they be made to feel comfortable? It's an impossible mission to do that. It's one thing to have a couple of extra resources for any and all students that don't feel like themselves, or they're stressed out and they have anxiety and they need someone to talk to or a place to feel comfortable. That's fine. But if you're going to present yourself as a 1 in a million unusual looking individual that you know is going to get people to look at you and say, hey, that's pretty shocking. I don't know what's going on here. Is this Halloween or something? Whatever. But how are you supposed to make them feel comfortable? You're not. They're supposed to be at war with the system. You're supposed to look at them and make yourself feel uncomfortable like they feel uncomfortable. I don't exactly know what they're doing, but all I can say is, no, of course the government can't spend unlimited amounts of money and resources trying to make people who are impossible to make feel comfortable to feel comfortable. When it comes to issues of gender, sexuality, diversity, and other such topics, there's a new debate at the University of Kansas. Is there an evolution or an elimination underway? KU administrators last week announced a reorganization that will bring many individual KU offices related to gender, sexuality, diversity, and equality under one organizational umbrella and into shared space in the Kansas Union. Leaders touted the reorganization as a nationally recognized best practice to better accommodate students and their evolving needs. What are the evolving needs of someone with a green mohawk? Not to pick on this person, I don't know who this person is. They're probably a wonderful person, but how do you accommodate someone that refuses to fit in with any kind of social norm? It's not possible. It's not even a factor of money. It's about creating a conflict with society through one individual saying, I'm not going to conform in any way. Now you need to spend money, resources, time, aggravation, trying to make me feel comfortable endlessly. It's about getting into an endless argument at taxpayer expense. You can't subsidize that. It's self-destructive for the student, and it's self-destructive for the university to try to please them. On Tuesday, though, about 20 students protested in front of the Kansas Union and argued that the university's ultimate goal isn't to improve the programs, but rather to eliminate them. With phrases like, quote, the first step in eradication is consolidation, students allege that KU leaders are trying to please conservative state lawmakers who have expressed disdain for diversity, equity, and inclusion programs on campus. Quote, they're attempting to criminalize the word diversity, a KU law student said of Kansas legislators. Yoder Mulkey told assembled protesters that KU was acting cowardly as it tried to align itself with those lawmakers. Again, though, if your entire purpose is to say, it's your fault, you need to make me feel comfortable if I have a green mohawk and white face paint, that's your problem. Well, that does undercut the whole argument of it's reasonable to try to normalize however someone wants to comport themselves. They don't need to fit in with society. That's ridiculous. KU administrators, however, haven't linked any of the changes to direction received from the state. Rather, KU last week announced via a press release that it was creating a new organization called the KU Student Engagement Center. The center was created by reallocating staff and resources from the Center for Sexuality and Gender Diversity, the Emily Taylor Center for Women and Gender Equity, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, and the Student Involvement and Leadership Center. The organizations, which all had their own offices, either have relocated or are in the process of relocating to space in the Kansas Union and the Sabatini Multicultural Resource Center. KU leaders said in the release that the reorganization will create new synergies for entities to work together on important issues. And it's also such a great way to police what's going on in these different centers, because if you have one strong manager in one office, even if they had a couple of hundred people in this office, which I'm sure it's smaller than that, but if you have a good manager who's over all these people, they know what's going on in all these centers. They know how appropriate or inappropriate it is. And you can also see these opportunities to phase this out, phase that out. This we're wasting money on. This we have too much resources going in. There's no one who hardly even goes there. It's maybe just this one person with a pink mohawk or another person with a green mohawk. We don't really need this office. This puts the university's operations in this strange engagement center completely under a microscope, so the university can do whatever they want at any time and get rid of whatever they want at any time. Well, this exciting reimagining of our services enhances our ability to make learning possible on a greater scale and in more meaningful ways, Tamara Durham, Vice Provost for Student Affairs, said in the press release. This new office will provide expanded support for students of varying identities, interests, and needs. It is also really efficient in that they can share resources. If you have 5 or 6 different offices offering different services to different groups of people, and you combine that all in one major office, yes, you're getting oversight and you're getting people who are looking into your business, and you can't just do whatever you want, but you also could get like shared administrative resources, like the people who actually run the office, answer the phones. And it's very effective. The only problem with something like this is they are going to phase out a lot of the nonsense, and it's the nonsense that the students want to keep going. These students want to have kept going. Not the taxpayers, the students. Adam Kellogg, a KU student who previously served as a graduate assistant in the Center for Sexuality and Gender Diversity, said he's worried the consolidation of the organizations simply will make it easier for the university to cut the budgets of those entities in one fell swoop. Yeah, it's going to be extremely easy. Oh, absolutely. He's right about that. But what I see and what many others have suspected is that this combining of centers will result in severe budget cuts and a lack of resources for students, Kellogg told the protesters. KU administrators have said that all staff members from the various offices will continue working in their roles through the Student Engagement Center. And all fall 2024 programming that each office had planned will continue as scheduled. They're going to eviscerate this operation in 2025. KU has also hired a director for the center and announced plans to engage students on coming up with a new name for the center and to establish the center's unique identity in the coming academic year. That's the whole idea there. You get one person who's in charge and can oversee and hold accountable all the smaller operations. And then you can compare one of the offices with another one of the offices and say, well, look, their budget per student service is this and yours is that. It's going to be an apocalypse for these different divisions. They may as well assume these divisions are gone because really they're going to be ripped apart. Jordan Brandt, the former director of KU's Office of Multicultural Affairs, will serve as the director of the Student Engagement Center. As part of her staff, she'll have an associate director of student impact programs and services, an associate director of student community programs, and an associate director of student leadership programs. Other staff positions include a director of family engagement programs, director of student affairs communications, and an assistant director of student senate leadership development. That's actually a lot of staff to add, so they haven't apparently gotten rid of other staff, but of course, they've added all this additional management. Someone's got to pay for it. The budget's got to come from somewhere. They're going to consolidate the rest of what's there and cut back. Leading conservative lawmakers had threatened to withhold tens of millions of dollars in state funding for higher education unless a new state law was approved that would limit what universities could do with diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging programs. The law that took effect July 1st prohibits universities from requiring any student or job applicant to take a diversity pledge. That means the universities can't ask prospective employees to commit to upholding certain diversity or equity principles, and generally, applicants can't be asked to outline their views on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging as they are considered for jobs, scholarships, or other such matters. The law, though, does not require or direct universities to close or downsize any of their diversity, equity, and inclusion offices. A spokeswoman for KU on Tuesday said, actions by the Kansas legislature did not drive KU's decision to create the new Student Engagement Center. Rather, she said, the decision aligned with best practices from a higher education organization that urges universities to reimagine facility usage and programming in order to keep up with the changes in how to best serve students. Quote, the realignment coincides with guidance from the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, which is a national organization of 15,000 professionals in higher education. The National Association earlier this year did release a report listing the top 10 issues that professionals in university student affairs departments had identified. 2 of the top 10 did involve issues of bringing various organizations together. One said reimagining the organizational structure of student affairs on university campuses was necessary to address evolving needs of the profession. Another finding was that universities should establish greater collaboration, cross-functional alignment, and communication. Cross-functional alignment will also allow for shared resources, which is good because every time they come up with some new identity that they want represented, you can't just open an entire new administrative office and hire a ton of staff and give it an unlimited budget. These things are ridiculous to begin with. So you've got to at least put it all in one center and say, okay, look, if you want to create a new identity or create some additional resources, you can do that, but you need to do it in a small way and see how realistic it really is. And also put it under an administrative management with people who actually do know how to run an office properly and provide services that can be held accountable for like people to look at it who actually know what they're doing and say, yeah, this is viable to keep. Most of this is not going to be considered viable to keep, though. The organization's report, however, also said one of the most important issues is to use direct feedback from students to improve support systems for students. Protesters on Tuesday said they were urging the university at a minimum to delay the consolidation until more students can speak on the issue and until more administrators can directly address their concerns. The problem with that is it's completely absurd and impractical. It was impractical to create these different centers in the first place, but you can't say, oh, we're going to keep the center for gender, but we're going to get rid of the center for diversity, and then we're going to get rid of this woman's center. You can't do that. You can't say, okay, let's argue about each of these centers, and all of these students are completely impractical to begin with. So you couldn't even explain to them the practicality of you can't just spend taxpayer resources this way. It's completely haphazard. If we are going to deliver any of these services, it should all be under one professional umbrella, which is what the University of Kansas is doing, and held accountable for how taxpayers' money is being spent, because most of this stuff shouldn't be being offered on college campuses, but to the extent that it is being offered on college campuses, you have to at least have accountability in what you're offering people and the services you're providing. It's not enough to just hear from students that you're not making me feel comfortable, even though I'm running around with a green mohawk and clown face makeup. Several speakers said they thought the university was underestimating how members of marginalized groups felt when they heard that an office they used was now being merged with other organizations that serve different populations and different needs. You would think they would be happy. You would think they would say, oh, well, I know what it is to be different. I know what it is to not be loved because I look like this, or I love this person, whatever, but I'm happy to hear that you're providing resources now for everyone. No, it's all about them, the individual. The individual saying, I don't feel happy, so the state should keep paying money and provide resources until I do feel happy. No, they shouldn't. And no, they're not going to. Yoder Mogi, who is queer and transgender, go figure that one out, said physical spaces that were separate from other organizations were important because it helps add to the safe space characteristic of the center. Quote, it's like coming home no matter where you are, Yoder Mogi said. It's the feeling of relief when you know you won't be misgendered. It's the comfort of being seen for who you are, genuinely and without judgment. The center was the one place I felt like I didn't have to be on the defense. What do you think is going to happen when you go and leave school and you go into a work environment where they're not even focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion anymore? Many companies are phasing it out now. Coming from Bloomberg, DEI retreat signals great quieting in corporate America. Quieting, specifically quieting, being told, shush, shh, no more of this right now. People have had enough. It's not what business is supposed to be focused on. There's an unprecedented wave of corporate rollback from efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, in recent weeks in what we might call the Great Quieting. Big U.S. companies such as Ford Motor Company, Lowe's Company, Harley-Davidson, and Molson Coors Beverage Company have announced they're backing away from many of the diversity programs they added over the past several years. The list also includes Tractor Supply, Deere & Company, and Jack Daniel's Distiller, Brown-Forman Corporation. The DEI retreat ranges from symbolic actions like ceasing voluntary participation in LGBT workplace ranking or avoiding any association with polarizing topics to momentous changes. Now, it is not symbolic to not report your company's stats on hiring LGBT people and what you're doing for health benefits in this way or that way to support diversity. That's not minor. That's actually quite major because it's that corporate ranking that determines what you're doing in your company if it's pleasing the Human Rights Campaign people. And the Human Rights Campaign people, if they can get a company to focus on living by their rankings, living by the judgment of the Human Rights Campaign, all of the services, all of the resources, the entire discriminatory structure of what a company will do to support the HRC agenda will be dictated and controlled by HRCs. They have control of the company internally by doing this index reporting. That's stopping at a lot of major companies. These additional changes can include ending diversity goals for suppliers, meaning hiring companies and giving other companies contracts based on their skin color or their gender or their sexual preference, so that if you're not black enough or you're not this gender or that sexual preference, you can't get a contract from that company. But if you do have those qualities, then they will give you a contract. Doesn't matter on the price and quality and availability and delivering and your credibility and all that as a company. They'll discriminate against you when they focus on diversity goals for suppliers. Similarly, with employees, a lot of companies are getting rid of their quota system, saying that you need to have a certain skin color or a certain gender or sexual preference, or we're not literally going to hire you or give you a promotion opportunity. Additionally, they will no longer tell executives, if you don't have a certain percentage of your employees that are a certain skin color, we're going to fire you, or we're not going to give you a bonus, or we're not going to give you a bonus, and we're going to fire you. That's been going on at companies as big as IBM, but at multiple companies. It's all getting phased out because, of course, it's absurdly illegal. Companies are also unlinking executive pay from representation targets and shifting focus to skills and career development instead of advocacy for any specific group. And that would be a specific group based on skin color, gender, sexual preference, or maybe even religious affiliation. These companies are essentially sticking closer to the day-to-day business of making and selling things, backing away from a wide range of diversity initiatives that became popular in 2020. It might be easy to dismiss this phenomenon as only happening among companies that cater to more conservative customers or don't necessarily view DEI as valuable to their base or workforce. But what we're seeing is the start of a bifurcation of corporate identity. So what does the Great Quieting mean for the future of the workplace and workers? We might hear less about pride parades or Black Lives Matters. Talk of unconscious bias will be consciously absent. Some companies have already ended their diversity training programs. Employers will still try to recruit and retain the right mix of talents who reflect what's happening demographically in society, but do it more quietly. While half a dozen companies in the Midwest and the South are in a quorum, there is a DEI chill in the air, and it's bound to blow toward the East and West Coasts in time. For underrepresented workers, the Great Quieting is going to feel a lot more like pre-George Floyd America. They may have to fight harder to be heard and seen by their employers. Or like anyone else, you could just do your job and do what you're supposed to do. Show initiative, be ambitious, be dependable. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. If you're ambitious, you're dependable, you do your job, if your employer can count on you, if your employer can come up to you and dump stuff on your desk and then not have to worry whether or not you're going to get that job done. If you're a problem solver, you can go far in any company. And any company that won't give you that opportunity, you can easily leave and take that skill somewhere else. That's what we're headed back to. And I'm excited about it. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.